Imagine opening your banking app on a Tuesday morning and seeing a notification that makes your stomach drop. It says, "Warning, you have $5,000 in your account that must be spent by midnight on Sunday, or it will be deleted from your balance." It sounds like a scene from a dystopian movie or a Black Mirror episode. But in China, it is already happening with digital yuan pilots. And in the white papers of the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank, it has a specific technical name. It is called monetary velocity management. They are building a system where money has an expiration date. They are designing a currency that rots like fruit if you do not use it. And once that switch is turned on, the concept of savings, the idea that you can store the fruits of your labor for the future, disappears forever. Before we open the case file on this control grid, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like this video if you want to support more forensic financial analysis like this. Most people think of money as a store of value. You work hard, you earn it, you put it in the bank, and it sits there waiting for you to use it. You assume it is your property, in the same way your car or your shoes are your property. But the forensic reality is that the money in your bank account is about to undergo a fundamental change. It is being transformed from a bearer asset into a control mechanism. We are witnessing the end of money as we know it and the birth of something entirely different. It is called Central Bank Digital Currency, or CBDC. The media sells it to you as an upgrade. They tell you it is about speed. They tell you it is about efficiency. They tell you it is necessary to compete with Bitcoin. They say it will help the poor get their stimulus checks faster without waiting for the mail. But the data tells a different story. The move to digital currency is not about convenience. It is about trapping you in a system that you can never leave. To understand why this is happening right now in 2025 and why the timeline has accelerated so aggressively, we have to look at the ledger of the central banks. The central banks have hit a mathematical wall. For the last 20 years, they have tried to stimulate the economy by lowering interest rates. When the economy crashes, like in 2008 or 2020, they cut rates to make borrowing cheap, so you will spend money. The entire global economy is built on debt, and debt requires growth to be serviced. But they have a problem. They have cut rates to zero. In some places like Europe and Japan, they have even cut them below zero. This is called the zero lower bound. When interest rates hit zero, the central bank loses its power. They cannot cut rates any further to force you to spend. If they try to make interest rates negative, meaning they charge you a fee to keep money in the bank, you will simply take your cash out of the bank. You will put it under your mattress. You will put it in a safe. You will convert it to physical things. As long as physical cash exists, the central banks cannot force you to spend. Cash is the escape valve. It allows you to opt out of their monetary policy. It allows you to protect your savings when they want you to burn them. This is why they are waging a war on cash. They need to close the escape valve. They need a system where you cannot pull your money out because there is no out to go to. They need a system where they can dictate exactly when and where you spend your money. That system is programmable money. With a central bank digital currency, they can program the money to expire. They can execute a policy called negative interest rates directly on your digital wallet. They can say that if the economy is slowing down and they need to boost GDP, your money loses 2% of its value every month, unless you spend it. This forces you to spend. It forces the velocity of money to accelerate. It solves their mathematical problem of debt servicing, but it destroys your financial freedom. It turns you from a saver into a conduit for liquidity. This sounds dystopian, but history shows us that this has happened before. We have to open the case file on the 19th century coal towns of West Virginia and Kentucky to see exactly how this mechanism works. In the late 1800s, coal mining companies built entire towns for their workers. They owned the houses where the miners slept. They owned the schools where the children learned. And critically, they owned the stores where the families bought their food. But the ultimate tool of control was that they owned the money. The companies did not pay their workers in US dollars. They paid them in something called Scrip. Scrip was a token issued by the company. Sometimes it was a metal coin, sometimes it was paper, but it had a fatal flaw. It was only valid at the company store. If you wanted to buy food, you had to buy it from the company. If you wanted to buy tools, you had to buy them from the company. Because there was no competition, the company charged 2 or 3 times the normal price for basic goods. The workers were paid in tokens that were immediately funneled back to the employer. It was a closed-loop system. But the real trap was that the Scrip had no value outside the town. If a worker wanted to save money to move away, to start a new life somewhere else, he could not. His savings were in a currency that no one else accepted. If he went to a neighboring town and tried to exchange his Scrip for real US dollars, the exchange agents would charge him a massive fee, sometimes taking 20 or 30% of the value. This was known as discounting. He was geographically and economically trapped by the medium of exchange itself. This system was known as the company store, and it was a form of debt slavery. It kept the workers reliant on the company for their very survival. Now fast forward to 2025. The plan for central bank digital currencies is simply the company store on a global scale. Instead of a coal company issuing the tokens, it is the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank. Instead of a physical fence around the mining town, it is a digital fence around your wallet. The mechanism is identical. If your money is a digital token that resides on the Federal Reserve ledger, they control where it can be spent. We have already seen the proof of concept for this weaponization of finance. We saw it during the Canadian trucker protests. The government did not arrest the protesters immediately. They did something much more effective. They utilized the banking system to choke them. They ordered the banks to freeze the accounts of anyone involved in the protest. Within hours, people found that their cards stopped working. They could not buy gas, they could not buy food, they could not pay their mortgage. They were debanked. And we saw it in the UK with the politician Nigel Farage, whose bank accounts were closed not because he committed a crime, but because his political views did not align with the values of the bank. That was with the current legacy banking system, which is slow and clumsy. With a CBDC, that process becomes automated and instantaneous. Imagine a world where your carbon footprint is linked to your digital wallet. This is not science fiction. Major banks and technology companies have already filed patents for this technology. The patent filings describe a system where every transaction is scored for its carbon impact. If you buy a plane ticket, that is a high carbon score. If you buy steak, that is a high carbon score. Under a programmable money system, the central issuer can set a carbon allowance for your digital wallet. If you've already bought your limit of gasoline for the month, the money simply declines the transaction. It does not matter how much money you have in your account. The money itself says no. This is the difference between money and a voucher. Money is permissionless. You have it, and you can trade it for whatever you want with whoever you want. A voucher is conditional. It is valid only for specific goods at specific times, and only if you meet the criteria of the issuer. We are being moved from a system of money to a system of vouchers. And the reason they are doing this is not just control, it is survival of the sovereign debt bubble. The debt burden is so high that they need to inflate it away. They need to create inflation to burn off the real value of the $36 trillion of debt. But they cannot create inflation if you are hoarding cash and refusing to spend. They need to force the money to move. They need to manage the velocity. The digital cage is the only way they can execute this maneuver without triggering a total collapse. So let us look at the structure of this cage because it is being built right now. According to the Atlantic Council, 134 countries representing 98% of the global economy are currently exploring or developing CBDCs. This is not a rogue experiment. It is a synchronized global rollout coordinated by the Bank for International Settlements, which is often called the Central Bank of Central Banks. In the United States, there is a program called Project Hamilton. It is a collaboration between the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston and MIT. They are building the technical architecture for a digital dollar. They claim it is for research purposes only. But you do not build a Death Star just to look at the blueprints. The architecture they are building has the capacity to handle 1.7 million transactions per second. But critically, it gives the central bank total visibility into every single transaction. In the current system, your private bank knows what you buy, but the Federal Reserve does not. The Fed only sees the aggregate data of the economy. Under a CBDC system, the central bank sees everything. They see that you bought a coffee at 8 a.m. They see that you donated to a political candidate at 10 a.m. They see that you bought ammunition at 2 p.m. Information is power, and total information is total power. This creates a phenomenon known as the panopticon. The panopticon was a design for a prison where the guard sits in a central tower and can see into every cell, but the prisoners cannot see the guard. Because the prisoners never know when they are being watched, they effectively police themselves. They change their behavior because of the threat of observation. If you know that the government is watching every single penny you spend, will you still donate to that controversial cause? Will you still buy that book? Will you still support that protest? Probably not. You will self-censor. This is the ultimate goal of the digital cage. It is not just to control your money. It is to control your behavior by linking your financial survival to your compliance. But the most dangerous aspect is the elimination of private property rights. If your money is just an entry on a government database that can be edited or deleted by an algorithm, do you really own it? Or are you just allowed to use it as long as you comply? The coal miner in West Virginia thought the scrip in his pocket was his wages. He thought he earned it. But when he tried to leave town, he realized it was just a permission slip from his master. We are all about to become coal miners in the company town of the global economy. So how do we pivot? How do we build a strategy to preserve our wealth and our freedom in the face of this digital enclosure? The goal here is to establish what I call parallel rails. You need to have assets and methods of exchange that exist outside of the digital cage. You need a way to transact that does not require the permission of a central authority. The first step is to recognize the value of the analog option. While physical cash still exists, it is a powerful tool for privacy and autonomy. The war on cash is accelerating. You see signs in stadiums and coffee shops saying, "No cash accepted." This is a psychological operation to make you view cash as dirty or criminal or obsolete. You must resist this. Use cash. Keep cash on hand. Cash is a bearer asset. Whoever holds it owns it. It has no memory. It has no tracking device. It works when the power goes out. It works when the internet goes down. But cash is losing value due to inflation, so you cannot hold your life savings in paper dollars. This leads us to the second rail, which is precious metals. Gold and silver are the original decentralized money. They have been money for 5,000 years across every civilization. If you hold a gold coin, you have an asset that is not someone else's liability. Think about a bank deposit. That is a liability of the bank. If the bank fails or freezes your account, your money is gone. Think about a bond. That is a liability of the government. If they default or inflate, you lose. But gold is not a liability. It is an asset that stands alone. It is physics. In a world of programmable paper, gold is the ultimate hard drive for your wealth. It cannot be hacked. It cannot be deleted. It cannot be expired. If the digital system imposes negative interest rates or expiration dates, gold effectively opts you out of that policy. It is the one thing they cannot print and they cannot program. The third rail is the careful use of privacy technology. I am not going to give you specific crypto advice because that market is volatile and full of scams. But from a forensic perspective, the technology of decentralized ledgers offers a way to move value without a middleman. The key is self-custody. If you hold digital assets on an exchange like Coinbase or Binance, you are just in another version of the banking system. They can freeze your account just as easily as Chase or Wells Fargo. But if you hold your keys on a hardware device, you are your own bank. You can cross a border with your wealth in your head. You can send value to anyone in the world without asking for permission. The final piece of the strategy is the human network. In the coal towns, the people who survived without being crushed by the company store were the ones who had skills and relationships outside the company system. They traded eggs for milk. They fixed a roof in exchange for firewood. They operated in the gray market. In a fully digital control grid, the gray market becomes the free market, building relationships with local producers, with farmers, with people who can fix things is a form of wealth preservation. If the digital payment rail goes down, or if your wallet is frozen, can you still function? Can you still feed your family? If you have built a network of trust with people in your community, you can. The system wants you to be an isolated individual, staring at a screen, waiting for your stimulus check to hit your digital wallet. They want you dependent. The antidote to dependence is connection. The forensic evidence is clear. The patents are filed. The pilot programs are running. The rhetoric is shifting from convenience to compliance. The expiration date on the old system has been set. The new system is being rolled out, but the cage only works if you agree to walk into it. It only works if you keep 100% of your life inside their digital ledger. You still have time to build your parallel rails. You still have time to secure your position in the analog world. The miner who saved his Scrip died poor. The miner who traded his Scrip for silver and tools walked away free. Which one will you be? The choice is yours. But the clock is ticking.